Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to compare watercolor paints that are labeled as the color Burnt Sienna. Now it's really important to understand that this series is focusing on the name, not the pigment, and the reason for that is to show you that the name does not always matter. Instead, it is the pigment and what makes up that actual paint color from that company. And Burnt Sienna is actually a really good one to compare because you're going to see quite an array of different pigments used. Some stick to a single pigment, which is PBR7, while others do PR101. It is important to note, however, that only one that I'm swatching today uses PR102. Now, PR102 is an earth red pigment. It's a natural red iron oxide, whereas PR101 is the synthetic version. So it's important to note that because those using PR101 are not using the actual pigment made from an earth red, they're using a synthetic. And we have 4 brands using that. Mijello Mission Gold is actually the only one to use that one. And then you will notice others use PBR7. Schmincke added in PBK9, which I find interesting. Now that's what makes these kind of fun is one, you see the different earth reds and red oxides that are going to be used here to make Burnt Sienna, but also it kind of helps you understand more why you should always look at the pigment number when purchasing a paint versus the name. Eventually I will do a comparison of the actual pigments. I do have a request for that, but right now we're just going through the names. And then we'll backtrack because, we can compare PBR7 because even two paints made with the same pigment don't necessarily look the same. So you'll see that when these dry. All right, so let's get started. Okay, we are going to start with Da Vinci. Now their Burnt Sienna is PBR7. As always, I'm just using my silver black velvet number 8 round. Oh, that's a beautiful color. Next is M Graham PBR7 as well, but you can already see it is darker. Next is Dollar Rowney Aquafine PR101. It may be synthetic, but it is a really rich color. Okay, now we're on to Schmincke, which uses PBK9 and PR101. You can already see the difference between those two. A little bit of spread from my Dollar Rowney side, but it's fine. Okay, now we are on Holbein, which uses a PBR7. Okay, Van Gogh PR101. Unfortunately, there's just not enough on my dot card for Winsor & Newton to do it justice, so I'm doing Daniel Smith now, PBR7. Sometimes the dots just aren't enough. Now we're on to Mijello Mission, the only one out of my sets that have PR102, and look how dark that is. It's very rich and dark even on the palette. Very beautiful. While the swatches are drying, I wanted to show you some of the tube paints just so you could see the differences on the palette themselves. So this one here is Da Vinci, which is PBR 7. This one is M Graham, which is PBR 7, but see how much darker this one is, and it was when we swatched it as well. And then you have Mijello Mission, which uses the PR 102, and it's more of a dark brown. It still has that reddish undertone, but as you can see, they darken. But two use the same pigment and completely different colors when you actually put them on the palette and paper. Okay, so here we have all of the Burnt Sienna colors swatched and dry. As you can see, there's quite a difference in the colors. Now the Van Gogh came off of a dot card, and it I think would be just a touch richer on the mass tone if I had a little more paint. Just kind of similar to my Winsor & Newton issue. Not enough, but a little more there. So the PBR 7 groups, which include Da Vinci, M Graham, Holbein, and Daniel Smith. Honestly, the M Graham one I like, but you notice when it dries, it doesn't have as much red. I mean, you see the red, but it's not as reddish as, say, Da Vinci or Holbein's or even Daniel Smith. So it's quite interesting just to see how different they can be. Schminke, you know, stands out a little bit, but that's also because it has that PBK9 edition on top of PR 101. So it looks different than our other PR 101s. Also, this is the Aquafine line, so it's technically the student grade. However, I find their paints just fine for, you know, reference. Now, the one that really stands out, obviously, is Mijello Mission Gold, and that is the PR 102. Look how rich that color is, and just the paint, the way they've made their paint makes it very pretty. Now, it doesn't feel like a traditional burnt sienna though, if you think about it, because, you know, most of the time burnt sienna has, well, that red oxide, you know, and earth reds, and so you have that reddish undertone. And this one's definitely more on the cool side for me compared to everything else. These are like more warm, so I find it kind of interesting. That said, it's still a beautiful color. Honestly, I like all of them. I would have to say the Holbein one I feel is really quite lovely, as well as, believe it or not, the Dollar Brownie one I actually like a lot, and M Graham. I'm not the biggest fan of M Graham paints. They're too sticky for my taste. Them and Sennelier. But yeah, that is Burnt Sienna. It's quite interesting with this color. I believe next I will be either doing Payne's Gray or Alizarin Crimson. I haven't quite decided. There's so many color names to go through, so please, as always, leave a comment below if there's a certain color name you would like to see. Eventually I'll go back and do pigment comparisons. Do keep in mind when you leave your comments, please, yes, there are tons of other brands, and this is by no means a full sampling. There's so many brands of watercolors out there. I can't afford to go buy every single tube for these comparisons, so I use the dot cards. I use what I do have in pans and tubes. But yeah, at the moment, until my channel grows enough, I can't really just go out and buy tubes specifically just for this. So if there is a color, say you really like, you know, or another brand of Burnt Sienna you really like, please do share it in the comments below. But just keep them kind, and please keep in mind I can't afford to go buy and compare every single one out there. But this is a decent sampling. I have what's going to be 9, but it ended up 8, and that's 8 different paint brands, and they're popular ones. So at least you got a good idea. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care. Bye now.